So, now that we are very full and have had a wonderful meal, I would like to take this moment to introduce a very special lady in so many ways. Any of you go to any of the birding festivals around here? Oh, come now. Yes? Okay. Any of you go to the hummingbird festivals? Anybody that does, we have this lady here to thank in many, many ways. When I first met Beth, she was presenting at the International Hummingbird Festival. It was my first time. And she was all dressed up and she had the sparkles in her hair, and I went, wow, I like this lady. So I would like to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Beth Kingsley Hawkins. She has a Master's of Arts, musical therapist, photographer. Any of you that are out and about will know of her Sedona Hummingbird Gallery in the Village, and the co-founder of the International Hummingbird Society. Tonight we're going to talk about love's messengers, but I really am so thrilled to see so many of you here, and let's listen carefully to the messages of love through the hummingbirds that Beth so dearly loves. So we are so glad you're here.
Yes, I do have a passion for hummingbirds. If you also have a passion for hummingbirds, let me hear you say yes.
Yes.
I'd like to start with some facts that many of you may not know because they're so amazing. I used to think there was just a few species, but there's actually 365 species of hummingbirds only on our continent. Yeah. And they have the largest brain in proportion to their body of any bird. So some of the things that I'll be telling you tonight, you can keep that in mind, the size of their brain. The rufous flies 3,000 miles to Alaska and from Mexico twice a year. Tiny, tiny little bird. That's why he's so feisty. He has a long way to go. If you've had experiences with the rufous. They've adopted to many climates, even up in the Andes, 14,000 up to 17,000 feet. There are actually hummingbirds found up there. And they are able to deal with the cold and the lack of oxygen. And our Anna's male is here year-round, and he sings, but when he is in love, he does a dive, whoa down, and does a little dance in front of his lady with a little whistle to his wing, and it's measured in body lengths. It's faster than a jet plane. So hummingbird in love is faster than a jet plane. The slide that you see on the screen is Love's Messengers, the cover of my book, To Be, How Hummingbirds Connect Us to Spirit. I'm close to finishing it, hoping for some financial support to help make self-publishing possible. Hummingbirds carry a deep symbolism across many cultures, and spiritually they are believed to be a blessing, carrying a message of love and joy. I wrote this definition of a hummingbird: an unusually small bird with wings that sing, a winged messenger, a flutter of hope, a flurry of joy, a glimmer of grace, a whisper of love, a delightful surprise, a tiny miracle, a spark of the divine. Each description is a chapter in my book with stories around that theme, and each chapter will have a small treasure hummingbird oil painting by Gary Jenkins, who painted the image on the cover. After 20 years in my Sedona Hummingbird Gallery talking with people about their hummingbird experiences, the book contains 83 heartfelt stories based on hummingbirds as spirit, and spirit animals, encompassing how they offer guidance, appearing as little warriors, portraying courage and endurance, embodying symbols of perseverance and resilience, encouraging us to embrace change, and even messages that have passed as we come to understand that love never dies. I feel that interpreting nature through stories artfully told can awaken our emotions to preserve nature as what we come to understand and love we want to protect. My husband, Dr. H. Ross Hawkins, founded the International Hummingbird Society 30 years ago, a nonprofit now headquartered here in West Sedona, with the mission of protecting hummingbirds and also teaching about them. I was there from the beginning when the light bulb went off in his head. Our 3-day Hummingbird Festival, July 24, 25, 26 this year, the last weekend in July, is a fun and fabulous experience. We have breakfast with the hummingbirds, local hummingbird gardens, expert talks, fabulous art, banding demonstrations where some lucky person gets to release a hummingbird from their hand after it's been weighed and measured and identified. One year when I was executive director of the society, after Ross transitioned, a husband and daughter wrote that their wife and mother was dealing with a terminal illness and that her dearest wish was to hold a hummingbird in her hand and watch it fly away. They wondered if they drove her all the way up from Phoenix, if I could guarantee that she could have that experience. I promised to make it happen. I let the banders in on it, and they knew to expect it, and she did come, and she loved the experience. Having worked in hospice myself for 8 years as a music therapist, I understood that holding and releasing that little angel from her hand was a metaphor for the release of her own soul, set free, so very meaningful for her and for her family. I got to release one too, after I heard its little heartbeat with a stethoscope. We just received an appreciated recognition from Keep Sedona Beautiful, an award for environmental stability, which was wonderful. And I have information from the Hummingbird Society and brochures about the festival on the table there. So tonight I will share with you 12 of the short stories in word and image from my book To Be. Story 1, from chapter 4, A Flurry of Joy, entitled A Sedona Moment. My husband Ross was standing in line at the grocery store. The lady checking out in front of him was purchasing an interesting-looking bottle of sake with a stylized bird design on it. Ross, being his shy and retiring self, asked, "Do you think that could be a hummingbird?" The woman responded, "Why? Do you like hummingbirds?" "Yes, I do. I founded the Hummingbird Society to save endangered species." "Well," she said, "then you need to meet Dorothy. She likes hummingbirds so much, she had her house designed to look like one from the air." And then she handed him Dorothy's phone number. That is how we met Dorothy in her 91st year. She was a tiny sprite who was in tune with the angels and skipped with inward. When you create from the wonder of the child inside you. Oh boy, oh boy, oh girl, what love can create. When she shared something meaningful with me, she would look skyward and say, "Oh, the angels like that." Wonder is a childlike state of innocence that Dorothy knew a lot about. When the architect asked her what she loved, she replied, "Hummingbirds." When he said he could design the house to look like one, she was enchanted. The house had 2 stories. The upstairs had her bedroom for the right wing of the hummingbird, the den for the left wing of the hummingbird, and in the middle was the music room, representing the heart of the hummingbird. She'd been married to a professional violinist. To enter there, one removed one's shoes, walked through 2 white cloud-like chiffon curtains draped on both sides. This created a magical passageway and an opportunity to enter into a new frame of mind. The room itself was carpeted in white, having only 2 speakers and a white leather chair and matching settee, and through the windows all across the front was a spectacular panoramic view of Sedona's glorious red rocks. The head of the hummingbird was represented by the small patio beyond that, with a flagpole extending out for the beak. Downstairs and outside were trellises of yellow tombstone roses, which created the impression of the hummingbird's fan tail. Imagine using a hummingbird as a source of inspiration for your home. Dorothy loved art. When I met her, there was a replica of a Charles Park sculpture in her yard. It was of a girl sitting on a sunflower playing the flute. I recognized it with joy, as I knew Charles, and the original sculpture had been in the center of the courtyard at Upland Country Day School in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, where I had taught music. Just inside her front door was a replica of the bust of Michelangelo's David, with hearts in his eyes. Whenever Dorothy greeted me with a hug, she insisted it be my left side to her left side, and she'd say, "Heart to heart, dear." Self-published at the age of 92, Dorothy shared a culmination of the poetry that flowed through her being, a radiant reflection of her personality and philosophy, her attitude towards aging, her perspective on life and death, and ultimately an invitation to celebrate life, as the title of her book read. I mentioned it in church earlier this year, her poem, the Gosh poem. Gosh, I've never lived this day before. What will it hold to distinguish it in its place and time? There's so much waiting to happen, so don't let it catch you napping. She was excited to include in her book my image of the female rufous hummingbird dining with the delicate flower. She wanted her book to help conserve the nature that she loved, and especially to protect the hummingbirds. We shared a unique bond, and I am so grateful that the hummingbirds brought us together. After she passed at 95, I sat together quietly outside in her garden with a few of her friends in remembrance of her, and magically, the most glorious rainbow appeared in the sky. And I have a number of copies of her book, Celebrate Life, here with me tonight, available for free. Story 2 from Chapter 2, A Winged Messenger, entitled, A Dynamic Surprise. When I met Brian and Julia, I learned that they had just been married for 7 days. We warmed to each other right away. They shared that they had a hummingbird story and laughed as they added, and it's a good one. At first, Julia shared that her mom had died just the year before, and that as she was planning for her wedding, she was pretty blue missing her mom. There are times when a girl just needs her mother. The day they went to check out a venue for their reception, they had a big surprise in store. As Julia tells it, quote, "We were outside in a beautiful garden with a long trellised archway, and amazingly 20 to 30 hummingbirds were flying around through the vines. Hummingbirds were everywhere. It was wondrous. I filled up with tears remembering how much my mother loved those little birds. I felt it was a sure sign that this was the right place for the reception. Somehow in that moment with all those hummers, I was very aware of her presence. Suddenly a hummingbird came right up to me and hovered there, right in front of me. 'Whoa,' I said, 'are you my mom?' On some level, I knew that this was the message from her that I so longed for. Turning to my fiancé, I said with conviction, 'Wow, that was my mom.' Brian, who had a left-brain scientific orientation, responded logically, as any of us might have. 'Oh, come on now. How do you know it was your mom and not just a hummingbird?' Well, at that very moment, the hummingbird flew over and pooped on him. Granted, it was just a little poop, quite enough to make a point. Looking skyward, he said out loud, "Okay, Mom, I got it." That was a turning point for Julia. She felt better knowing in a new way that her mom was still present for her. Now 6 months later, they are still telling their story and laughing. There in the gallery, when Julia saw my image of the hummingbird-shaped cloud with hummingbird flying to the light, she filled up with tears and said, "Oh, that's perfect. It has a very special meaning for me." And it went home with her. Story 3, from Chapter 4, A Flurry of Joy, entitled Hummingbird Ally. I witnessed a fascinating therapy session with a young man imaging an animal totem in each of the energy centers or chakras of the body. He was being guided by the originator of the personal totem pole process, Dr. Stephen Elegio Gallegos, a Jungian therapist. In this process, one is encouraged to dialogue with each animal that makes itself known to you, one in each of the chakras. The young man was imaging his animals with no difficulty until he came to the crown chakra, the area located just above the top of the head, considered the center for spiritual energy. He couldn't seem to get any image there at all. Dr. Gallegos was very patient and asked if he could get a sense of the environment there. "Well, yeah, it's kind of murky, swamp-like." Continuing to guide, his therapist asked, "Can you see anything through the murkiness?" Continuing to guide, his therapist asked. He responded, "Maybe. Oh no, it's a mosquito." Dr. Gallegos encouraged him to dialogue with the mosquito. "Mosquito, what are you doing here? I don't want you in my crown center." Mosquito was unabashed. "What's the matter with me? I'm a mosquito. I have a right to be here." "Yes, but you're not very creative." Well, it turned out that it was a female mosquito, and to prove him wrong, she multiplied into a swarm of mosquitoes. "Oh, no, now I have a swarm of mosquitoes in my crown center." The guiding continued, with his therapist encouraging him all the time to accept whatever came to him, even if it felt negative. Suddenly, a slow smile, you can hear it coming, crossed the young man's face, and then in delight he announced, "A hummingbird just came and ate up all the mosquitoes." Wow, now I have a beautiful hummingbird in my crown center. And he was ecstatic. As you can imagine, this session profoundly influenced me. I was very moved by it, and a while later when Dr. Gallegos announced that he was having a special 2-week training in Embudo, New Mexico, to teach this method, and still had 3 openings, I watched my right hand fly up. Yes, me, I want to come. I signed up to become a trainer in the method on the spot, and now I offer personal totem pole sessions with classical music to discover your very own animal allies and their alivenesses. Story 4, from Chapter 7, A Delightful Surprise, entitled My Power Animal. Many of you know Rabbi Elisha, who leads the Jewish Community Center here in Sedona. She was at a workshop inviting her power animal to come and make itself known to her. She went into a deep meditative state and began to image. Quote, "I was expecting my power animal to be something with 4 feet on the ground, something sure-footed like an antelope or a deer." And the deer did appear, but it said it wasn't my power animal, but offered to take me to it. I leapt onto its back and was carried to a meadow. I was so curious to learn what animal it would be. I was so surprised and amazed, a hummingbird suddenly appeared in front of me. "What? Are you my power animal?" The hummingbird winked and responded, "Do you know how much power it takes to hover?" And then it zipped off. So much energy packed into such a tiny body. And I'd like to add that hovering is one of the hummingbird's most outstanding attributes. Unlike other birds, their power is generated on both the upward and the downward strokes, moving in a figure 8, symbolically for infinity. Above all other birds, they are the most skilled at the ability to remain suspended in midair, and so are the only birds that are the true hoverers. Story 5 from chapter 8, A Tiny Miracle, entitled A Hummingbird Prayer. A woman from California shared her experience. We had heard about an amazing chapel, all made of glass, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright's son, called the Wayfarer's Chapel in Rancho Palos Verde, California, and we were excited to visit it in person. It is in a grove of redwood trees on 3.5 acres of landscape gardens with spectacular panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean and the coastal mountains. The chapel was so beautiful, we decided to return the next day for the Sunday service. We were in this exquisite environment, but the minister was young and inexperienced, and quite frankly, the sermon wasn't that interesting. Above the minister's head were 2 small windows that were open, and all of a sudden, a hummingbird flew in. The bird tried desperately to find a way out and kept flying to the glass to escape, but there was so much glass it confused him. We wondered if he would ever find his way out, but the only way out was the same way that he came in. Everyone was keenly aware of his search. We were all hoping he would find the exit. Meanwhile, the service dragged on, and as it ended, the minister called forth anyone for a prayer, a private prayer. At first, one woman came forward, and he prayed with her. And then another woman came forward, but she surprised everyone by saying, "I pray that the hummingbird will find a way out." So the minister took up the prayer, and he began, "I pray that the hummingbird," and just as he spoke those words, the hummingbird found his way out the same way he came in. Everyone sighed with relief. At that, the minister smiled and said, "I just performed my first miracle." I had to include that one. Story 6 from chapter 6, A Whisper of Love, entitled The Dance of Love. Sedona is a very friendly town. Our local post office can have long lines of people at times. A woman in line noticed the man behind her, camera in hand, studying his pictures. Curious, she inquired what he had photographed. Responding, he showed her some images he had taken of hummingbirds in his backyard. "Oh," she said excitedly, "we had the most wonderful nest on our patio, and would you believe it? She nested right on a Kokopelli wind chime." "Well," he said, "you just march right next door and tell Beth at the Sedona Hummingbird Gallery. She would be thrilled to know about it and could even take a professional photograph of it for you." And that was how I heard about such an extraordinary nest. The Kokopelli figure makes it a truly southwestern hummingbird nest. And since Kokopelli is a fertility symbol, the black-chinned hummermound was right on cue. The nest itself was a wonderful illustration of how hummingbirds use spider webbing to hold the nesting materials together and to anchor the nest on whatever they build it on. They just fly with it in their beaks and dance around the nest, securing it. In this case, she also added spider web vertically to the length of the wind chime in the front and the back, seemingly to add greater stability. And the fun part of that is, as the babies grow, the spider web stretches so that the nest expands. The owner told me where she purchased the wind chime, and I wasted no time getting one for our yard in hopes of a similar nesting experience. Then I was able to purchase 20 of them wholesale for my gallery. And each time someone bought the image, they wanted their very own wind chime in hopes of having a nest in their backyard, and they all sold out right away. I named this special image The Dance of Life, and that was the start of my being dubbed the photographic nest diva of Sedona. Story 7 from Chapter 6, Whisper of Love, entitled Anna's in the Snow. We longed to have a hummingbird nest of our very own. Ross and I had hung out nesting material, unprocessed cotton, llama hair, soft hair from our toy poodle Gabby. We also hung carefully chosen wind chimes and the right-sized hooks, hoping to entice them to nest in our yard. We had 2 shallow fountains of recirculating water for bathing, one on each side of the house, maintained 8 feeders on all sides of the house, and had researched and planted the most hummingbird-appealing plants and flowers to offer natural nectar, all with the same goal of having a hummingbird nest in our yard. We had seen some unique hummingbird nests in our travels. There was a volcano hummingbird nesting in an apple orchard in Costa Rica. We had watched a little hermit hummingbird dance around a fern leaf as she secured her nesting material with spiderweb in the rainforest of Tobago in the West Indies. During that same trip, we also saw a rufous-breasted hermit chick almost falling out of its crumbling nest, just about ready to fly. And all of this intensified our desire to experience a nest at home. I grew up in New England, and I was used to seeing bird nests in trees, like the ruby nesting in the trees. But here, they choose different nesting sites because they have to get out of the elements and the sun. So they are amazing where they choose. I photographed a costus nest image on a nest of a clematis bush, and it's a Sedona first that a nesting costus was here. I photographed one that I really love, a black-chinned and upside-down copper catcher. A black-chinned nesting in the bottom of the O of the welcome sign. She added purple pansies to match the gorget of her handsome male. And I played with the letters of the welcome sign to create the meditating hummingbird in the Om. They even nested on patio chandeliers. There was a butterfly sculpture, a dragonfly nest, another chandelier, and yet another chandelier. And even on Christmas lights, mother and baby on the lights and mother feeding the baby, and the nest on tiny, tiny Christmas lights. Somebody had left them out all summer instead of taking them down at Christmas. And then the Annas. It looked like this nest was empty almost. They were 2 babies, just gray fluff, but they were sleeping. And then all of a sudden, up came Mama to feed them, and they popped up, and I call this last image the pop-up chicks, with their little orange mouths showing the color so she won't miss them. Still, each year I kept my fingers crossed thinking, maybe this will be the year for our nest. Then one day in March, there was a knock on our back door. I opened it to see our neighbor Jill. Her face was flushed with excitement. Beth, we have a hummingbird nest. I knew you'd want to see it. Come on over. I matched her excitement, but couldn't help pouting a little bit, wondering why they hadn't chosen our yard. She knew we had been doing everything possible to have the nest by us, and must have read my face because she exclaimed, well, I guess you feed him and we breed him. So I was excited to go over and see it. When she announced they had a nest, I was sure it would be an Anna's. It was the 17th of March, and that species doesn't migrate in Sedona, and they're hardy enough to nest in our normal winter. Sure enough, Hummer Mom had a triangle of red feathers on her throat that matched the color of the male's colorful gorget throat and head, which is totally helmeted in red. You can see the few red feathers on the female Anna's gorget on the screen, although they look dark because of the lighting. Then surprisingly, the very next day it began to snow, and that was the day that her chicks were hatching. It kept on for 2 days with an accumulation of 7 inches. This is practically unheard of in Sedona, where snow usually melts by noon. As a photographer, I have to get up and get out early when it snows. Thoughts of protecting her ran through my mind. A tarp? An umbrella? What would happen to this precious nest? Ross insisted I not mess with her, that she knew what she was doing, and indeed she did. She lowered her temperature and hardly left the nest at all. She hunkered down and sealed the nest shut with her chest feathers, incubating the 2 newly hatched chicks with her warmth. Her careful placement of the nest directly under a larger branch kept the snow from landing on it, and if a drop did land on her, it melted. So she was very successful. She also had sap in the tree next to her, very close by, and the sapsuckers had drilled a hole so she could just go and put her beak in the hole and get sap to feed the new little ones. Imagine that little hummingbird raising her chicks in all that snow. Yet again this spring I thought, maybe this will be the year. But guess what? I just received another knock on the door from Jill. As it turned out, it was especially good that Jill had the nest in their tree. Her mother was very sick at the time and close to death. Each day, Jill would look out at the nest and watch the hummer mom keep on keeping on, and it encouraged her to keep on keeping on too. I will share Jill's story next. Story 8 from chapter 6, A Whisper of Love, entitled Jill's Story, Enduring Love. As Jill tells it, in 2013, as winter drew to a close and spring was just around the corner, my mother suffered a massive stroke from which she could not and would not recover. My mother Shirley was a strong, resilient woman and a loving and nurturing mom. Even without food and water, her strength carried her for 3 weeks until she passed away at home. At this same time, an Anna's hummingbird built her nest in the cottonwood tree on our back hill. The branches of the tree were at eye level off our back porch, so we had a perfect view of her nest. I watched her every day. I named her Little Shirley after my mother, and marveled at her strength, and her will, and her resilience. It was strange how the little Annas in her nest coincided with what was happening with my mother during those very same 3 weeks. A few days after we first saw the nest, snow began to fall, and it fell non-stop, 7 inches in 2 days. It was very close to spring, but Mother Nature had this one last surprise in store. Such an unusual weather pattern for Sedona. The question now was, how could this hummingbird survive all the snow falling on the barren branches of the cottonwood tree, and right at a critical time when her babies were hatching? Amazingly, as my own mother slowly left us, the hummingbird mom persevered. Somehow, as I looked out each morning and saw her still keeping on, it would give me hope that my mother was still with us. In that way, it helped me to deal with the impending loss. And indeed, that hummer did manage to keep her new chicks safe and warm. At first, we were afraid for them, and then we were cautiously optimistic. But then we were overjoyed that this little family not only survived, but thrived. The sapsuckers drilled holes in the tree next to them, provided nearby sap for them. Beth captured this image. As the sun set, a rim of light outlined Hummer Mom, and the shadow of the backlit chicks showed through the leaves, while their open beaks peeked out above. While my mother did not survive, it was reassuring and consoling that life went on, and 2 beautiful hummingbird babies were born, and we watched the whole thing unfold. We saw through our sadness at our loss the enduring love and strength of family. In so many ways, that little hummingbird nesting in the cotton tree was truly my mother. Story 9 from chapter 6, A Whisper of Love, entitled Sherry's Story, A Whisper of Love. As Sherry tells it, my beloved husband Scott passed away in January 2023. Prior to his death, we spoke of a sign to let me know he was still near me. I suggested a hummingbird, and he nodded with a big smile. In the past, the feeders in our yard were only visited occasionally, and over the years we had seen such a small scattering of hummingbirds. But almost instantly after my husband's death, I began to see an increase in our hummingbird activity. Then the most incredible thing happened. Every day between 8 and 9 in the morning, an Anna's hummingbird would hover in front of the window, staring at me, as if she was looking to see if I saw her. As if that were not enough, in May, I was sitting on the couch in our 3-sided, very large, high-ceilinged covered patio that has a gated front open to the outside, when a female Anna's hummingbird flew in and circled right around my head. A hummingbird had never flown into this space before. I was in awe. The next day, the Annas returned. Within a few weeks, she began to build a nest in the gate room on the decorative light strand attached to the beam above. She laid 2 tiny eggs in that nest. I was fortunate to witness Mama feeding the growing babies until they were big enough to sit on the edge of the nest and test their wings, and then watch them fly off. Wondrously, those chicks remained flying in and out of the gated room all summer. I kept the feeders filled, and they seemed to recognize me and trust me. And they were actively present every day. Here in Sedona, Arizona, these hardy Anna's hummingbirds stayed with me all winter and zoomed around, flying from trees to feeders in what seemed to be a playful, affectionate dance. Fast forward to the present. I was decorating the exterior of my home with Christmas lights. 2 Annas returned to the gated room and were chasing one another around. I could identify the male with his head helmeted in magenta red feathers that glowed in the right light, but there was no way to know if the others were the now grown chicks or the female. But this playfulness continued for several days. The day before what would have been Scott's 77th birthday, I heard an Anna's chittering loudly. I went to the gated room to see what the commotion was about. With much sadness, I discovered an Anna's hummingbird on the ground, still and lifeless. Oh no, she must have flown into the window. And then I observed the most extraordinary behavior. The male Annas would intermittently fly down to her and perch on her back. He even rotated her with his bill, appearing to try to revive her. I could hardly believe what I was witnessing. He would continue to gently push her with his beak, as if he was pleading for her to wake up. His devotion brought me to tears. Reliving my own personal experience, I was identifying strongly with the broken-hearted male Annas. He kept vocalizing and hovering over her, wanting to help. He never left her. He was obviously very distressed and was struggling with the loss. His tenderness in staying with her was so touching. Although this tragic loss was so very sad, and at the same time, I experienced it as a profound gift. The sensitivity and tenacity revealed by this small and amazing creature was truly moving. I could only interpret it as a cherished, beautiful, and unique story of love and loss. Sherry continues, "For me, this is a poignant love story. The experiences with the hummingbirds have meant so much to my healing process. A reassurance of Scott's desire to be present in my life, even in his absence. The spiritual evidence that I have experienced is a testament to the thin veil that separates the earthly world from the spiritual realm." There is an important coda to this story. A friend gave me a new hummingbird ornament that I hung there in the same patio the following spring. Nature is so resilient, wonder of wonders, and Annas came and chose to nest in it. It is truly one of the most artistic nests I have ever seen, and it filled my heart with joy. Story 10 from Chapter 8, A Tiny Miracle, entitled, A Feather on the Breath of God. When I met June Osborne at the Rockport Fulton Hummingbird Celebration in Texas, she was determined to finish her book on the ruby-throated hummingbird. She was still seeking images of a nesting female, and I was pleased that she chose to use this image of mine with the hummingbird nest in the rain. She was protected by the leaves, but there was one tiny raindrop that landed on her tail. June tells the following moving story in the preface of her book. She writes, "I had to put my ruby-throated hummingbird book on hold. Life intervened in the form of a diagnosis of breast cancer. The ruby-throated book was forced to continue hovering in place. What followed was a modified radical mastectomy and 6 months of chemotherapy. It looked as if fate was against the completion of my book. Then, one day, as I was walking through the kitchen, I saw a small object on our white floor. At first, I thought it was a sunflower seed, but when I picked it up, I discovered something far more precious. It was a hummingbird feather. It was so tiny, I was afraid my breath would blow it away and I would lose it forever. I got my 10x hand lens so I could examine the feather more closely and took it to a patch of sunlight. In that infinitesimal object, I saw a minute piece of the rainbow. I heard that there is a Native American belief that hummingbird got its colors from flying through the rainbow. I wish I could tell you that the feather came from a ruby-throated hummingbird because of my book, but that would have been too good to be true. Across the surface of the feather was a wash of deep violet with flecks of indigo blue and aquamarine iridescence adding to the spectrum. It was unmistakably a gorgeous feather from a mature male black-chinned hummingbird. How did a hummingbird feather find its way to my kitchen floor in Texas? My theory is that the bird slammed into the reflection on my storm door, knocked loose a feather or two, and then flew on its way. Perhaps my son's shoe picked up the feather from the porch when he walked in. All I know is shortly after Mike left, I found the feather. Here, when I needed it most, was one of the grandest gifts I have ever received. A perfect piece of God's handiwork, so small and lovely, I cannot find the words to describe it. This tiny microcosm of wonder that I held so reverently in my hand fought off the powers of darkness for me, just as it did for the Aztec warriors of old. It added a flash of brightness to my day and reminded me once again that God, in all creatures great and small, pays attention to detail. How could anyone in all creation but God pack so much detail into a structure that is scarcely 10 millimeters in length, little more than 1/4 of an inch? Through the simple act of picking up a speck of the rainbow, I was given light and hope to dispel the darkness of my debilitating breast cancer. A small gift of wonder, straight from God's hand to mine, encapsulated in one tiny feather, gave me the inspiration to finish my book. And then she added this beautiful line. Now I ask, what shape do angels take when they come to call? Her story illustrates so beautifully how making a closer connection to nature can nurture the soul and help us move through the darkness into the light. Story 11, from chapter 8, A Tiny Miracle, entitled A Hummingbird Myth. The feathers, they completely captivated me. Small and dainty and elegant and luscious. Indigo purple they were, undulating slowly in the breath of the early morning high desert breeze, strung together as part of a strand of sparkling jewels and shimmering treasures. The artist who made the light catcher spoke of its beauty. Here's an amethyst. This one is turquoise, and oh, see the hand-blown glass bead. It has a tiny pink rosebud in it, and look at the crystal. And then she paused, and the feathers, of course. She fingered them tenderly, a small half-smile on her face. The feathers come from a magical bird. They sometimes live so far away that humans have to plan to travel to see them, and often go many miles just to even come close to their outer reaches. In truth, very few people have taken the time to visit them. Sometimes we've gotten so busy in our all-important lives we've almost forgotten about such things as magical birds, until, that is, we are found by a few feathers that send us into raptures of rememberings and imaginings. The story of Hummingbird is, as you might imagine, quite intricate, but I heard a tantalizing morsel from the artist who made the light picture. The Mayan woman had been given the feathers by her great-grandmother and had had many, many conversations with Hummingbird. One of the things about Hummingbird that can be spoken out loud or written down is that she hardly ever loses her feathers, but every once in a rare while, she offers them as a gift. However, the feathers are not free. Humans who are blessed enough to be found by a feather must learn to be responsible for such great treasure. Beautiful they may be, lovely and graceful as they dance in the breezes, oh yes. But it is also true that they come to a person for a reason that are beyond our ken to understand. This is for sure true. You see, the feathers whisper of the rich treasures of the world that exist right next to us, right now, this very minute. They allude to magnificent wonders that some humans have forgotten to remember. But when the breath of the wind is just right, blowing from just the right direction, the feathers can become a portal into the world beyond the one that we think is real. The world that is so richly alive, its colors shimmering, bronzes and copper and cool, quiet blues and aquamarines. And sometimes when the mysteries of the West are especially strong in a person's heart, Hummingbird will fly directly to you and look right at you in response to your deepest soul longings and heartfelt desires. And so it is, if you are seeing with the eyes of your heart, he or she or one or two of their feathers may find you. I need to add that you aren't really supposed to keep hummingbird feathers because they're protected by the Migratory Bird Act or the hummingbirds themselves. Dry. Story 12 from chapter 7, entitled A Delightful Surprise. Working as founder and executive director of the Hummingbird Society, people always told Ross their hummingbird stories. He always wanted one of his own, and then, one day, it happened, as Ross shared it. I wish you could have been there that Saturday morning in May of 2008. I was just finishing my breakfast when I heard a knock on the back door. I opened the door to see my neighbor, Brian, holding an old 1-gallon pickle jar under his arm. It was covered with aluminum foil with holes punched in it. Inside the jar was a black-chinned hummingbird, and she didn't look good. Ross, he said, I found this hummingbird on the floor of my garage. It must have gotten shut inside and I couldn't get it, it wouldn't get out. I didn't know what to do, but I figured you would, so I'm bringing her to you. I told Brian that if she was still able to eat, she'd probably be okay. So I reached in and took the hummingbird and walked around to the side yard to one of our many hummingbird feeders. I held her in my hand and I put her in the beak in one of the feeder ports. And yes, she drank. Oh yes, she drank and drank and drank for about 5 minutes. And then she stopped. Good, I thought. And now she'll be able to leave. I sat there in the lawn chair and I held out my hand, palm up with the hummingbird in it. I was expecting she would fly away immediately, but she didn't. She did stand up and blink her little eyelashes at me. Did you know hummingbirds have eyelashes? But she just stayed put for 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes went by, and then 15, and I was beginning to get worried. But then she started flapping her wings, and she rose up about 6 inches, and I thought, here she goes. But she didn't. Instead, she flew toward my face, and with her tongue in her beak, she tickled my mustache, and then she flew away like a little skyrocket. I don't speak hummingbird, but I think I know what she was trying to say. a moment of gratitude. So Ross finally had his own experience with this little messenger of love. And he would smile and say, "I was kissed by a hummingbird." Ross had been working since 1996 with the mission of protecting hummingbirds, as well as teaching people about them. So here was a well-deserved thank you from the little bird itself. So why work to save hummingbirds? It's about valuing the preciousness of all life.